Therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you've been called to one glorious hope and future. There is one Lord, one faith, and one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, in all, and living through all. However, He has given each one of us a special gift through the generosity of Christ. That is why the Scriptures say, when He ascended to the heights, He led a crowd of captives and gave gifts to His people. Notice that it says He ascended. This clearly means that Christ also descended to our lowly world. And the same one who descended is the one who ascended higher than all the heavens, so that He might fill the entire universe with Himself. Now these are the gifts Christ gave to the church: the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do His work and build up the church, the body of Christ. This will continue until we all come to such unity in our faith and knowledge of the Son, of God's Son, that we will be mature in the Lord, measuring up to the full and complete standard of Christ. Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of the body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow, so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love.
Today for Worship Online, we start a new series talking about how our gifts can be used in the church and for God's kingdom and His glory. So I'm here with my friend, Pastor Brian Collier, Reverend Doctor. How you doing?
I'm fine. You?
I'm good. We are talking, one of the things we're going to be using a lot is an acronym, APEST, A-P-E-S-T, APEST.
Yeah.
So before we start down this road for 6 weeks, talk a little bit about what that acronym means, why we're talking about it in our church.
APEST is the acronym for the first letters of what Paul says are the gifts that God gave the church. Apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. Some Bible versions say say pastor in that last one, but the translation is the same, it's just a choice of words. So shepherd makes APEST. And it is part of a conversation we're having about people not just using their gifts in the church, but how does it really affect the kingdom of Christ when we know how God has gifted us? Because Paul opens Ephesians 4 there by saying, lead a life worthy of your calling. Now that's in contrast to the gift list that he uses in Romans and the gift list that he uses in 1 Corinthians, where they seem a little bit more situational, or a little bit more, oh, hey, this is a gift that comes because it's needed. And APEST really forms a little bit more of the way that you're kind of base wired. Yeah. And so we're trying to help people understand that God has wired you to answer His call in the world. How do you make the connection?
Yeah, so instead of someone being like hospitable, yeah, or has mercy, or those are gifts in the other passages.
Those are spiritual gifts,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And these are gifts for answering a call.
Yeah.
And when you look at those three lists, you can see those little nuances if you look closely at the text.
Stuff like this is kind of big right now, so people will talk about the Enneagram a lot,
right,
and some people probably who are watching know that, or Myers-Briggs or anything like that. But this is not like a personality thing. So how is this different from like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or anything like that?
Well, I think the Enneagram takes into account all of the circumstances of your life, how it has shaped you into the person you are, and how you approach life. I mean, it is a little bit of a personality test, but it really is what motivates you. Mm-hmm. This is the way they talk about the Enneagram. Myers-Briggs type indicator is a little bit more of a personality test, but it can't not take into account the experiences of your life that have shaped you the way you are. This is way before that. This is a baseline gifting, and it doesn't ignore the fact that there are circumstances in our life that have shaped us. But at the base, this is who you are, and really, a little bit honestly, you have all of these gifts. A couple of them are primary, and if you would begin to lean into that, and most people already are, honestly, they just aren't leaning into it for God's kingdom. And so if we can understand them better, we can lean into them for God's kingdom, and people can find the life that Jesus meant for them to find.
So are these are gifts when you talk about wiring? These are these given by when somebody comes to faith, like kind of sort of like supernaturally given by the Spirit, or
they're the scripture, the Ephesians 4 passage said they're given by the Spirit. I think one of the major challenges, even for people who are people of faith at this point, is that we have relegated. The reason there's confusion around this is we have relegated apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher to offices. Mm-hmm. And so, somebody say, "Oh, you're my pastor," or "You're my teacher," or "I'm an evangelist." I'm not. That's not my primary gift. But we have relegated those to offices, and they're not offices. They are gifts of the Spirit. The text is really clear about that. So everybody has these, because some people are looking, "Well, I'm not any of those things." Yeah, you are. Everybody's given one of these gifts.
In Ephesians 4, the passage we read today, Paul, before he gets to these gifts, talks about unity all the time. He says the word one, I think 7 times.
7 times, right. That's right. Yep.
So he before he talks about our individual uniqueness, which is a value, particularly in our country and our culture, we really care about. So like a lot of us might be listening to this and going, "Ooh, which one am I? Like, how do I use my individual gifts?" But a lot of times we can turn that on its head and see, like, I use like my personal gifts from my agenda or my glory or my so.
Yeah.
But he's very clear at the very beginning. This is about unity. So how do you balance? This has always been really interesting to me when it comes to any of this stuff. When we talk about it, it's like, how do you balance? I am uniquely gifted this way. Mm-hmm. God has given me this that's different from most other people.
Right.
But I'm also part of this bigger thing.
I think it's just one word. I think it's God has made me uniquely this way for. Yeah. There's the word, for. And if we understand that we are given the gifts to build the kingdom of Christ, and that's a big kind of church concept, but it just simply means introducing people to Jesus, helping them grow up to be like Jesus so they can experience the life that Jesus intended them to experience. This is the reason we are given these gifts, is for that work. And by the way, your worldly life, I'm not really sure what kind of the right phrase there is. Your worldly life, your vocational life, your family life, all of those also benefit when you learn who you are and how you function from this base gifting. So we want to say, you mentioned it, we separate ourselves. Well, I'm this, and this is going to benefit me, but all of the benefiting me is ancillary. It's the overflow. The main reason we are given this gift is for the work of Jesus in the world, which comes back to something I know you've heard me say 1,000 times, and you'll probably hear me say it 1,000 more if Lord lets me live that long, is that we were not created for vocation. We were created to be on mission with Jesus. And so people say, "What am I supposed to do with my career? What do I want to be when I grow up?" And I said, do whatever you like. Do what gives you joy. Because whatever it is that gives you joy, you are more likely to be on mission with Jesus in the work because you're happy about going to work than just begrudgingly doing some vocation. So be on mission with Jesus in the world. That's why you're given these gifts. And by the way, if you're doing something you vocationally love, then the way you're wired is going to have personal, spiritual, emotional, physical, relational benefits too.
Yeah. So these words, apostle, prophet, they carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
They're really sort of heavy. And a lot of, we have talked about this on our church staff for a little while. You just mentioned this a little bit, but maybe go a little bit deeper. It's like, we mentioned this on our church staff a lot, and so we're a little bit more familiar with this because we've had a little bit of a background. But if I'm a banker or a teacher or a mailman or an attorney, how would knowing this stuff about me benefit like how I go about my regular day?
So I'm gonna give you an example using my gifts, but I'm gonna prompt you to think about an example using your gift to share with everybody. So my primary gifting is I'm an apostle, which means that we are interested in how the good news of Jesus gets carried out, gets passed on, gets moved out from one place to. So think about how you would do that that gift might apply if you were a business owner. Instead of serving these people, how do I serve that group of people too? How do I engage that new constituency? How do I take this business and propagate it to that community? It's the same gift. And I think that's really one of the points, is that we use these gifts all the time for our own purposes. We just need to circle back around to an awareness of there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not primarily the reason the gifts were used. So what's your primary?
Teacher.
Yeah.
You kind of put me on the spot. The thing I'm thinking about though is my oldest daughter, recently just broke her leg, and she has been in a wheelchair a lot. So we live in this neighborhood downtown, and I've been walking her in the wheelchair, and it's been rough for her. So she's talking about how hard this is, and partly because of the pain, but mostly because she's having a really hard time not doing stuff, because she's really active. You know my daughter, so she's really active. And so one of the things I've been talking to her about is, I tell my kids all the time, even before this, was like, we sometimes have to do hard things intentionally, so that when the hard things that we don't intend to happen come to us, we know how to like prepare for them. And so when I'm walking her around in the wheelchair, this is the conversation I have with her all the time. It's like, and I'm just like, hey, when I talk about doing hard things intentionally so that things like this happen, you're 11 years old. This is probably the hardest thing you've gone through in your life right now.
Right.
So how we respond to this will be, and she was funny because she was like, you got to get all like pastory on me or like teachery on me when she was talking about. So that's the first thing that kind of comes to mind, is that, but I do like the idea that the more people who watch this or go to our sites know about themselves, they are more able to use, because it's not just about self-awareness, it's about self-awareness for the purpose of Jesus in the world.
Well, and people, if you look at the other gifts, so teachers the last one on the list, apostles first one on the list, prophets are people who are interested in making sure that we're aware of when we're not doing what God would have us to do. So man, I mean, where would we be without people who are justice minded, justice aware in our society? Because some of us just put our heads down and doing our thing, and then somebody goes, oh, wait a minute, that shouldn't be. And we all know people like that.
And we've had a lot of experience with people like that over the past year and a half.
Absolutely. But then you think about this, everybody knows a shepherd, somebody with a shepherding gift too. It's that person, when that devastating thing has happened to you, that you want to go to, because you know they're going to care about you and they're going to help you walk through that circumstance. They're going to be your encourager. They're going to be your help. They're going to maybe even connect you to somebody else who's been through what you've been through. That's the shepherd showing up. The evangelist is the person who goes, hey, we're doing this thing. Don't you want to go with us? And so we get talked into all sorts of really grand things because somebody who has the gift of an evangelist has recruited us to their cause. Now, obviously, all these gifts can be turned on their head and be used for sinister purposes, but they're given by the Spirit of God for the work of Jesus. And they can also have really wonderful benefits, personal benefits, when we begin to recognize and use them that way.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for your time.
Oh, loved it.
Well, in the next little bit, we're going to give you an opportunity to respond and actually maybe figure out your gifts. We're going to provide some online opportunities for that. So be on the lookout for that as well. Brian, thanks again. We hope you have a great one.
See ya.